So welcome to the Gear Locker Impressions. Today we're talking to Chris, who's a Cold War airsoft player.
Yes.
Hi, Chris.
That's correct. I am.
Nice to know. So, this impression,
Yes.
what is it?
This is the United States Marine Corps in 1984 when they switched over to the M16A2 assault rifle. So normally you see them. They also work for a grenadier impression if you swapped out the rifle for an M16A1, which is also what I do, or if you were using the M60 light machine gun behind you, because that was throughout the entire Cold War. That was a standard GPMG of the US forces.
Cool. So what's the difference, starting with the rifle, between the M16A1, for those who don't know, and the M16A2?
The M16A2 assault rifle has a different rear sight aperture on it. It also has a thicker barrel, and it has 3-round burst capability. There is no fully automatic capability on this weapon.
Because they had issues with fully automatic in Vietnam.
Yes, just spraying the trees, getting rid of everything, and wasting a lot of ammo.
Cool. Now the rest of the gear, is it reproduction or original?
No, it's all original.
Nice.
It's all battered and bruised, original. It may not all be USMC stuff.
Right.
It's probably, some of it is probably army stuff. But it's all original, real deal. The flat jacket's an original 1982 dated one. And the battle dress, I believe, is slightly later on. It is the later cut of battle dress, but it's really, really, really hard to get 1980s cut battle dress because they had what's called an Elvis collar on it,
Right.
which like came out to about here. So this does have the shorter collar on it. If you're stitch pitching.
No stitch pitching here. So is this the whole impression, or is there anything else you can add to it?
You could swap it out for the M60 GPMG, or if you were on essentially what's like a road march, you would have an Alice pack, which is a big rucksack,
Right.
with a bedroll underneath it and a sleeping
Which
bag on top.
you don't really need in your average simulation.
I do have and have used it in longer Cold War games, but it is pretty much when they are fighting, the first thing you will do is ditch your rucksack,
Right.
and either use it as a support for your rifle or return to it after the battle is over.
Okay. So do you do this in your regular game day, or do you have a specific event that you take the gear to?
This is for a specific event, but I also game with it regularly as well to get used to the weight. I mean, the flat jacket's about 5 kilos,
Right.
so it takes a bit of getting
Yeah,
used
yeah,
to,
yeah.
sort of jumping about in it and stuff. This is for the Cold War airsoft group that's run at Gunman Airsoft
Right.
down south, run by iLARP Film Film. So it's like an airsoft game, but there's also an element of LARPing to it as well.
Right.
So when you're shot, you don't put up your hand and say hit. You're like and like give your
So,
best
yeah.
sort of dying impression. So there is an element of LARPing to it. It was very, very sort of the first game that we went to. It was kind of like I was kept putting my hand up to say I was hit, and then I was getting shot in the hand, so I was screaming anyway. So it kind of actually worked out quite well. But no, they run big Cold War games down south at 4 sites. I couldn't tell you the exact sites that they are, but if you check out Gunman Airsoft, you will see
You'll
all
find the information there.
all the information there. And sometimes they've got vintage vehicles from the Cold War there, and we can have up to 150 players in a game. All sorts of sort of different game bases as well. So one of the sites is an old RAF Lancaster base, and you need to sort of clear out the airfield, which is really, really cool. I've not done that one, but I've seen pictures of it and it looks amazing. And the one that we done recently down south was in Eversley, and that was called Red Mist, and that was essentially a scenario that we were on an island, and the Soviets and the East Germans were also on the island, and we were trying to battle to take control of the island essentially. So so there's lots of things to do. It's a 48-hour game, so from when you sort of start your kit on the Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, it doesn't finish until you can have a ceasefire at night. Sometimes there's a night game. We had a projector up and watched Kelly's Heroes actually, so we did kind of have a bit of a ceasefire. But then our SAS guys, they went in and stole the enemy flag in their camp while the enemy were sleeping. So that was kind of cool. But no, it's a great event. Great guys there. They all know their gear. Their impressions are bang on. I mean, when you see pictures from the event, it looks like pictures. Apart from the specs, it looks like wow, that could be in 1984.
Nice.
So yeah, good.
Going back to gear though, I noticed you don't have any badges.
No.
So is that a personal choice?
It's a personal choice, but it's also good for the US Marine Corps, as they do not really have any identifying insignia apart from on the BDU blouse itself. There would be an Eagle Globe and Anchor, which is US Marine Corps symbol, with USMC underneath it, and also on the field cap. We do have a field cap here somewhere. I'll get it later for you.
Okay.
That'll have the Eagle Globe and Anchor on it, and sometimes US Marines would stamp that onto the
Right.
helmet cover to show that they were Marines. I don't mind wearing the globe anchor because I'm doing a proper reenactment impression, but particular unit badges for me, it's something that if you're doing an impression, I've absolutely no problem wearing it whatsoever. But these are actual combat units. These patches are usually combat patches, like the 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, stuff like that. So I don't really feel that I need to wear them, not with a Marine impression anyway. So they've no insignia. Sometimes there would actually be a US flag on the side of the shoulder, but we are actually the reason that the troops in Grenada had that because they were going to Lebanon with the multinational force and they needed identification.
Yep.
Normally they would want to scrub as much identification as they could, so people wouldn't know what unit they were from. And if you were in the field, obviously you'd have your sleeves rolled down as well, unless you were in the jungle, and you'd be fully cammed up, and you wouldn't have a little chin beard either, or a nose ring.
Explain your belt kit. How's that loaded
so
out?
we've got the Alice LC1 system, which consists of a Y-frame yoke, which connects at the back and connects to the top of the ammo pouches.
Okay.
And
Cool. Okay.
on the back is the individual LC2 first aid kit and the canteen pouches. Then you've got your 45 holster with your M1911 45 caliber pistol, which doesn't have a mag in it at the moment because safety first and all that. Have a wee look at that.
Nice.
Again, this is for the earlier impressions in the 1980s, sort of about 1986. This look started to sort of disappear, and you see the introduction of the M9 Beretta with the plastic holster, and this helmet is replaced by the PASGT helmet, which was also introduced with the vest, but the Marines didn't really seem to get them until about mid 1985. Most of the pictures I've seen, they start to sort of change the look, and I feel that they kind of lose their identity a bit with it. It looks a lot like German helmets from World War II. I don't really like it. It was originally called the Fritz when it first came out in Europe, which I'm sure wasn't very popular at the time. And it was the 82nd Airborne that trialled the PASGT helmets, and they dropped in on Grenada. So they had them, but you could identify the Marines differently because they had
they still had
the old M1 steel pots. But the chin strap has been changed from the Vietnam variation to a slightly different chin strap that cups round, which is actually more comfortable than the Vietnam one. The Vietnam one,
It's the one that came under the
the one that
cut your throat.
cut your throat if the artillery blast came off. So the legend says.
So what's in the haversack?
So we have the M17A1 US military gas mask in here.
Okay.
I actually have the correct chemical hood for it. It's a horrible thing to wear. The lenses are knocked out because it was for the Cold War game.
Yeah.
So you'd still need to be able to wear your specs underneath. I don't imagine the glass is ballistic glass. So if it got shot by
absolutely shatter.
it'd shatter. Then you'd lose your eyes, and you'd probably not be very combat effective, I imagine. So yeah, there's an M17A1 inside here, which is the gas mask. And if you can hold that for me for a second, it would pull into that, and then put that on.
Right.
Obviously, it would normally have the lenses over the eyes, but
yeah.
because this is used for airsoft, it hasn't, and it's got a charcoal lined chemical hood, which is pretty nasty. So we'll put that on the table there, and they would usually, if it was just gas, they would probably just put their gas masks on, but if they had any sort of imminent chemical warfare threat, they would all be wearing chemical suits.
How did you get involved in airsofting? Did you get involved through airsofting specifically? You want to play airsoft, or was it going through the historical route via the Marine impression?
It actually starts 15 years ago, when I played a game called Operation Flashpoint Cold War Crisis, and that sort of started my Cold War obsession. I thought it was amazing. It was really cool. My dad was out with the RAF in Germany, so I started to ask him stuff about that, and then sort of got into it. I got a helmet when I was out with the air cadets on an air show, and that was sort of the first bit of gear. And then I started to collect random pieces, but didn't really do anything until I started playing airsoft in sort of the mid-20s. And then the first thing that I had was the camouflage, but I never actually had the flat jacket, so I was just had the battle dress and older M1967 stuff, which was incorrect at the time, but I didn't know that. And I also had that M16A2.
Cool.
And then eventually I had an M16A1. I've got an M16A1 as well. So yeah, it's been a long road, a long, obsessive road, I would say. Just trying to get all the details right and looking at exercise photos from the 1980s and seeing what they did and what they didn't do. And a lot of people confuse it for Vietnam because it is very similar looking.
Very similar,
But you have your post-Vietnam differences, like your chin strap, and the fact that the Marines actually now have cat-eye bands. They would have just been using rubber tubes in Vietnam. I also do a United States Marine Corps 1969 impression, which is when they have the ERDL fatigues.
Yeah, because the camo pattern's different as well.
Yes.
From the 60s to the 80s.
It is. I have ERDL RDF, which is the prototype transitional woodland for the Lebanon multinational force impression, and I also have the M1955 door-on plate flak vest, which is the one they used in Vietnam, and they were using up until, I have seen them in service up until about 1986, when it starts to sort of branch off, and even reserve units were starting to get PASGT vests and helmets. Right. But you wouldn't really see this combination in the army with the PASGT vest and the M1 helmet. It would be the PASGT vest and the PASGT helmet, or the M1 with the older M69 sort of similar sort of material flat jacket. I mean, this would not stop a round. It's not body armor. It's designed to protect you against artillery shells and grenade fragments and stuff. It's not going to take
a flak jacket, not a bulletproof vest.
People think, oh, that's body armor. I was like, well, it wouldn't be very good body armor because you'd probably be shot and die.
So, Chris, tell us about the M60.
Okay, I'm just going to go and put this M16 down.
Cool.
We will move on to the heavier support weaponry. So, first of all, this is the A&K M60, so it's the A&K replica of it, and it's the M60E1 light machine gun, which is the standard general purpose machine gun for the US forces.
Okay. Nice. In regards to replica, how close is this to the real thing?
Weight-wise, not even close. This is about 8 kilos, maybe 9, fully loaded.
Right.
By the time you've got all the stuff in it. The real one's about 13. That's what it was called, the pig. In Vietnam. But it still allows you to have weight on it that allows you to use it as a support weapon rather than run about with it like an airsoft rifle. This isn't something you'd shoulder, and in real life you would have very much difficulty shouldering it. It's a crew served support weapon. It's designed to be fired from an emplaced position, and usually you would have someone else feeding the ammo into it, rather than the box magazine, which is a slightly more modern version, unfortunately, as A&K took the M60E4 commando versions that they already had, the more modern versions, and slapped the Vietnam front end on it, really.
I see.
Okay. It's close enough.
Close enough.
It works. It's got a genuine M60 GI sling on it as well, which helps when you're lugging it about all day.
It looks nice and thick and comfortable.
It's
compared to some straps for support weapons.
A very good rate of fire on it. It's also got adjustable rate of fire on the nozzle here, so you can adjust it. It's got a little MOSFET in the barrel where you can adjust the rate of fire, because you go through a lot of BBs when you have this.
So before we finish off, if anyone else is interested in pursuing Cold War airsofting or any other period of history, where might they go? Particularly for the Cold War airsoft.
Well, the best sort of thing to look at is the US Militaria forum,
right?
Which is brilliant. There's a lot of guys that served in Germany, a lot of guys who were there in the 1980s that talk about their gear and have got pictures of their gear and stuff. It's just kind of really do your research. Now it's just kind of just Google it and kind of get through it that way.
And the gear, not necessarily from the 1960s, etc., because you were saying earlier that some of it's getting very hard to get hold of.
Yes.
But you could put together a fairly decent impression with what's available.
Yeah, I mean, eBay's good for it. There's also quite a few Facebook groups now that deal with sort of like Militaria and that. There's Cold War Airsoft one, and there's a US gear one as well. I can't remember the exact name on it.
But you could just search it.
But there is sort of like US military 1960s to 1980s one, and stuff comes up on that, and most of it's genuine most of the time. I mean, sometimes you get repro stuff, but a lot of this stuff, like these jungle boots, are repro. They're not original. Original ones are really, really hard to find. But eventually you just kind of start replacing your repro stuff out with like real stuff when you finally acquire it and stuff. But no, it's easy enough to get hold of. It's easy enough to get hold of BDUs. I mean, just go on eBay and just type in Woodland Battle Dress and it'll all come up. And they're cheap. They're really cheap to get hold of.
Right.
Rapid Deployment Force and ERDL and sort of the earlier prototype patterns are much more expensive and much more pricey, and kind of don't really want to be doing much airsofting in them in case you ruin them. But no, they're quite easy to get hold of. It's easy to do a basic loadout. The flat jackets, they're quite hard to find. You can only really usually find them in like large and extra large sizes from surplus. This is actually an extra small flak jacket, so it's I got quite lucky on this. I think I got it for about £80-90,
Right.
which is quite cheap for PASGT stuff because it's a fragmentation vest. You know, it's not got like cardboard filler or like foam or that in it. It's actually got
It's
proper
the proper stuff.
issue stuff. Yeah, but you kind of go on eBay and sort of look at type in the things that you're looking for, like M1 steel pot helmet or PASGT vest or M17A1 gas mask or stuff. Just kind of pick an impression, pick an era, or pick a photo, and then kind of do your research based upon that photo. Like, what operation was it? What sort of kit were they using? I mean, the internet's a fantastic resource for it all. I mean, I knew nothing when I started, like 15 years ago, researching all this stuff, and now like it kind of all just sort of clicks into place, and you're always changing bits to make it slightly better and stuff like that. But yeah, eBay's good for it, and any army surplus store. Mainly because this is American stuff, you're probably looking at American army surplus stores to get this kind of thing. But sometimes you get them in sort of like local army surplus, like just junk piles of them because they don't really know what they are. But it's hard to tell whether or not they're repro or not.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, viewers, and remember, take your hits.